Welcome to day 211 of 66 and 26, our journey to read through all 66 books of the Bible in 2026. We're starting week 31 today, and we're back in Leviticus chapters 22 and 23. I want to focus on Leviticus 23. It's a central chapter in the entire Old Testament because God gives instructions for the 6 major festivals that the Jewish people were to celebrate throughout the year. Each one of these has significant meaning. They were pointing to one of two things. The festival was either pointing to the regular cycles of nature and God's provision through the crops and the harvests, or pointing to God's miraculous rescue of Israel from Egypt and all that God had provided for them as they came from slavery into the promised land. So there were 6 festivals, 3 of them in the spring, 3 of them in the fall. And God starts off his instruction in Leviticus 23 with the first and the really major festival of Passover. Passover started counting the months by that Passover. So the first month is the Passover month. We read about that back in Exodus 12, 13, and 14, and closely connected with the Passover was the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Part of the Passover feast was to bake bread without any leaven in it because they didn't want to take the time for the bread to rise. They needed to bake it quickly so it had no leaven in it. And so that unleavened bread every year was to remind the people of Israel of their miraculous, very rapid escape from Egypt at the hands of Pharaoh at the time of Moses. So that festival of Passover for us Christians typically happens right during Holy Week, as we remember the Passover lamb, Jesus Christ, who was sacrificed for us and whose blood covers over the doorposts of our heart, if you will, just like the Passover lamb whose blood was on the doorposts of the Israelites' homes in Egypt to remind us that we are saved in Jesus, just as the people of Israel were saved by the Passover lamb. And that Passover feast then is the first of the festivals in the spring. The second festival comes right after, and that is the Feast of First Fruits. The priests would wave the first fruits of the fields and the vineyards, and there would be a reminder that God is the one who provides for all that we need, body and soul. The Feast of First Fruits aligns as Christians with Easter Sunday. So the Feast of First Fruits, Paul picks up on in 1 Corinthians 15 when he says, Christ is the first fruits of those who have risen from the dead. Christ first, and then all of us later when we rise from the dead as well. So that Feast of First Fruits in the Old Testament, Leviticus 23, aligns with Easter. And then 7 weeks after First Fruits came the Feast of Weeks. So 49 days after, the people would gather once again and rejoice in the entire harvest that came, not just the first fruits, but the entire harvest. Well, that aligns with our day of Pentecost in the New Testament. 50 days after Easter is Pentecost. So if you think about the 7 weeks, the 49 days, the day after that is the 50th day, and that is the day of Pentecost. And those festivals, Passover, First Fruits, and Feast of Weeks, all align with our Holy Week, Easter, and Pentecost. That's the spring festivals. In the fall are 3 festivals known as the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which we talked about 2 weeks ago in Leviticus chapter 16, and the Feast of Tabernacles. And those fall in close alignment as well, usually in September and October time period. And the Feast of Trumpets it really marks the beginning of the new Jewish year. Even though the first month starts with Passover, the Jewish New Year is Rosh Hashanah, and it is the head of the year, the beginning of the new year, when we remember God created all things and God gave his word to sustain us in life. And those are things that are remembered at Rosh Hashanah. And the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, we talked about a couple weeks ago with the scapegoats who were prayed over, and then one led into the desert, and then one sacrificed for the people. The Feast of Tabernacles was meant to be a time to remember the Israelites' journey from Egypt to the Holy Land, to the Promised Land, as God rescued them and then gave them provision throughout the wandering in the desert. Shoes did not wear out, their clothes did not wear out, and they were given manna and quail and all that they needed to live as they wandered through the desert for 40 years. And so the Feast of Tabernacles was meant to be a time when they would remember year after year as they built up small little huts called tabernacles. They would sleep in them at night, and they would put some palm branches overhead, just barely covering over them. They could see through the gaps and see the stars in the sky, and they would remember it really is not our own strength. It's not our own buildings that protect us. It's the hand of the Lord that covers over us and watches over and protects us no matter where we are. And so we can learn that same lesson as well. We may not celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, but we remember that the Lord is the one who provides for us. And that's the reminder for us of the Feast of Tabernacles, that God provides and continues to bless us in every way by his grace. So all 6 festivals are described here in Leviticus 23, the major ones for the Jewish people, all fulfilled in Jesus Christ, and a reminder that God is our Lord, provider, and protector.